Hello, this is Bad Vibes. Sorry I've been away for so long. I've been dealing with a crazy sickness and nearly coughed up a lung recording this short video. So hopefully over the next few days I improve a lot. I hope you enjoy, and I hope to be pumping out regular content from here on. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. About 3 months ago, I was babysitting my younger siblings while my parents were out. It was around 8 p.m. and everyone was in the living room watching TV while I was in my room folding laundry. No, my room was located at the back of the house. While I was putting the clothes away, I hear a knock on my window. Without thinking, I opened my blinds a little, and instantly, my soul left my body when I was face to face with a pair of wide hazel eyes staring back at me. I let out an ear-piercing scream and ran back to the living room to grab my siblings and take them to my parents' room to hide. While my siblings were confused and asked me why I screamed, the back door was practically shaking, as I could also hear someone banging on the living room windows. My sister was already on the phone with the police, and my brothers were hiding under my parents' bed while I was in the hallway with a long kitchen knife, trying to somewhat protect them. Minutes later, the banging and shaking stopped, and I heard 2 people jump over the front yard gates. The police arrived 5 minutes later and took our statements. After the incident, my parents got us a dog from the local shelter named Buddy. 2 weeks later, I was alone at my house with the dog getting ready for school, since school started at 10 a.m. because the underclasses were taking exams and high school seniors, like me, came to school later. I was feeding Buddy when I hear the front gates shaking, then footsteps quickly next to my house. Then I heard someone trying to open my back door. Instantly, Buddy's ears picked up, and he began growling and barking like crazy. I was about to call the police when I heard the person flee. Unfortunately, the police never caught the person, and I soon forgot what happened. About a week later, someone broke into my dad's car and stole his radio. Yesterday, I was cleaning up the living room and decided to have some light in the house by opening the curtains. When sometime later, I see a truck slowly approach the house. I hid behind a bookshelf so that the driver wouldn't see me through the living room window. The truck driver's windows were really tinted, and I felt the driver's eyes staring at me as if he knew where I was in the house. He sped off quickly after that. I honestly don't know what's going on, and I hope it doesn't escalate. When I was around 15, I started babysitting for a family with 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl. The mom knew me as her oldest child was friends with my little brother, and had asked my mom if I could help her because she had started taking on more shifts and her husband was doing the same. They lived right next to the high school, and they paid well, so I agreed, despite not having much experience. Pretty quickly I realized that this was going to be difficult. The kids were great, but I was nervous around them. The oldest was fine, just playing on his Xbox most of the time, or doing homework, but the 2 youngest were a different story. The middle child, daughter, was completely obsessed with horror movies, and on more than one occasion, I had to hide knives from her since she wanted to reenact them. And the youngest son tried to set the Christmas tree on fire. I know what kids can be like since I have a lot of younger and older cousins, but these ones drove me insane, and I would consistently have to worry about them hurting themselves or each other. If they were acting up, I would threaten to call their mom, which would normally work. It was after a few months that I realized if I had mentioned their dad, that's when they would really start behaving and do what I asked them to do. Now, I never really met their dad. I just knew that he was the guy that was really tall and built, but was always described to me as still being really nice, and I never really thought about it. On this occasion, I said to the youngest boy that I would call his dad if he didn't stop misbehaving, which resulted in a huge tantrum. So I ended up calling him and explaining. Lucky for me, the dad was getting off work early, so he said he would be home as quick as possible and apologized for his kid's behavior. When I explained this to the kid started sobbing and ended up locking himself in his room. That day, the dad got home, and they weren't joking when they said that he was really tall. I'm only 5'3" and was 15. When I saw him having to crouch a little to get through the door because of his size, I remember thinking, oh shit, no wonder the kids don't misbehave when he's there. I said hi and apologized for having to call him at work, which he just brushed off and said that if it needs to be done, don't worry about it. We both sat on the couch. I can't really remember why, but I think we were talking about the days that they needed me for. Now, at this time, the two youngest had went outside to play, and I was with the oldest, as I had just tidied up a little bit from dinner. I was pretty weirded out because the oldest kept getting a little antsy when asked to go to the shop. He kept making up excuses to his dad, so I just offered to go. I could see that the dad was visibly frustrated and just wanted to defuse the situation. Now, I would like to point out that everything seemed normal at this point, but I do remember feeling intimidated by the dad. I had only met him this one time and spoke to him for no more than 20 minutes. It turns out that the oldest said to his mom that he didn't want to leave me alone with his dad, as he apparently had been watching me a little too closely during the short encounter. The parents asked me if I could babysit a little later that week, which I agreed to. However, in the space of a few days, that quickly changed. I got a text from the mom apologizing for the last minute arrangements, but saying I couldn't babysit. I was a little agitated since I had changed my plans, but wasn't too bothered, and just said it was fine, and to just let me know if they need me. She asked me to come over to get my pay for the last 2 weeks, so I decided to stop by before going home. As soon as I got to the house, I could tell something was off, but I didn't want to pry. I went in and said hi, talked about books for a little bit, and then left. It wasn't until the next week, or the week after that, where everything kicked off. I come home to my mom, being upset and angry, pacing in the living room, while my stepdad was trying to calm her down. I immediately started asking her what was wrong, feeling a little worried. Instantly, she just threw her arms around me and started crying and holding me. I was supposed to be babysitting at the time, but again, got canceled on, so I was home earlier than I originally said I would be. Pulling away confused, I asked her what was wrong. Turns out, my mom had been trying to get a hold of me, but my phone had died. I had went to babysit, and nobody was home, so I just decided to head back on the bus, but wasn't able to let my mom know. She sits me down and starts trying to ask me questions about the dad and my time babysitting. Confused, I mentioned that I only met him once, and only really spoke to him on the phone a handful of times when the kids were acting up. Nodding, my mom starts pressing on and asks me what else happened, questioning me, saying I could tell her anything. I just looked at her confused and told her that nothing had happened, and asked her what she was going on about. I remember her taking deep breaths and saying, "Oh, thank God," before letting me know what happened. Now, as I said, the details are vague because this was on the news. Turns out, the dad had killed someone while working and had been taken in by the police. During the interrogation, it turns out that he admitted to beating his wife, and there were other speculations of assaults. There was also mention that one of his types were petite girls who had dark hair and were pale, which happened to match my description at the time, and my mom was terrified that something had happened to me. I'm turning 23 this year, and it still gives me shivers. I remember feeling like I was going to throw up and had a sinking feeling in my stomach. My mom held me close because she was worried sick all day and scared that something had happened to me. Needless to say, I stopped babysitting for that family right then and there. I felt so sorry for the wife because she was honestly one of the nicest women I have ever met. About a week later, I got a text from her, and it turns out I left some books there, so I told her I'd come and pick them up. When I saw her, my heart sank. She had obviously not slept and was putting on a brave face for the kids, who weren't sure what was going on. We ended up sitting in the kitchen, and I gave her a hug, just trying to comfort her. I had mentioned that if she needed help with the kids, since he was gone, I would try to help out, but she immediately refused. As it turns out, people had started attacking the house. She gave me my stuff, paid me my wages and a little bit more, and said that she appreciated it, but that it would be better if I just took a step back from the family, as she didn't want me getting hurt for being associated with them. To this day, I still think about them, and it still scares me after thinking what could have happened. I still talk to the younger kids, and I even helped tutor the youngest girl. I helped the oldest when he started high school, because I noticed kids bullying him for what his dad had done, which was awful considering it wasn't the fault of the family. So I'm female, and at the time of this story I was 16. Since I didn't have a job, I babysat kids. I was babysitting 7 kids from different families. I was also watching my 3 brothers, making 10 kids total. It was snack time for the kids, so I went to get something for them to eat. I finished preparing the last meal when a shady-looking man approached the house. I told the kids to go in another room and hide. I had a small pocket knife and my phone, ready to protect the kids at all costs. I witnessed the guy trying to open the doors and windows. I called the neighbor, but no answer. I went to the oldest kid, who was 13, and told her if anything happened that she should sneak out the back door. The kid was pretty understanding and not questioning for a teen. I saw the front door lock jiggling. I told her to gather the other kids and run to the neighbor's house for help. The front door opened as the last two kids exited. The man asked in a scruffy voice where the kids were. I tried to play dumb, but he wasn't buying it. He told me that he would shoot me if I didn't tell him where the kids had gone. He got super close to me. I slowly pulled the knife out of my pocket and stabbed him through his arm. I wasn't going to let him get the kids. Unfortunately for me, I thought he was bluffing about the gun. He took out his gun as I ran away and fired 2 shots. Both luckily missed me. After he missed, he put down his gun and tried to pull the knife out of his arm. So I grabbed the ropes off the desk and tackled him to the ground. I tied him to the support beam and ran out the back door. I found the kids with at least 10 neighbors because they had all split up. The cops came and they told me that this guy was wanted for some violent crimes. I was about 6 years old when my encounter with this creep happened. My mom and I lived in a quiet, semi-ratchet neighborhood, and across the street from us lived this old Hispanic man. He was super old and bony, and he was probably around his 70s. I'm not too sure. It was a long time ago. He would often sit in his front yard for hours on end. Now, this obviously isn't very suspicious at first glance, yet nothing is ever that simple. My cousins used to live right down the street from us and would always visit us over on the weekends. So as you would expect, we would play outside in the front yard, and of course, the old man would be there. He would usually just sit there and watch us, and as small children, none of us really paid any attention until he started coming over. He had a mango tree in his backyard, and he would always come over and offer my mother and I mangoes. My mom would always try to talk to him, since I was a shy kid and hating talking to people. Even now, I have a small fear of talking to older men. Just something I've never been able to shake off. This behavior isn't really shady until he started calling me over to talk to him. Every day after school, he would be outside and he would call me over. My mom, being a little bit naive at the time, would tell me to go over there and say hi, but I would relentlessly refuse. In this instance, she forced me to go over. He would ask to speak to me as if I was some sort of pet. He would ask me if I would grow up to be a beautiful young woman, and if I was willing to start growing into a woman now. He would also ask me inappropriate things, but being 6, I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. He also had a weird habit of trying to grab my hands. I was always confused on what he was asking me, and it didn't make the situation any better that he was trying to talk to me in Spanish, and I can only really understand when my mom speaks Spanish. He would always call my 4-year-old cousin over. He would ask her simple things, pretty much the same stuff, but nothing that any of us could really understand. Eventually, the behavior got progressively worse. Every time I would come home from school, he would walk over to us and try to touch our head, and even try to hug us and pick us up at certain points. By instinct, we would run and hide by my mother. Now this is where it gets bad. My 2 older brothers lived with us, but them being high school students, my mom tasked them with babysitting me, to which they would never listen, so a majority of the time I was left home alone until my mom came home around 7. The old man noticed this. Every time my family left me alone, he would show up like clockwork and knock on our door, asking if anyone was home. He would just stand there and then leave. He did this pretty much every day until we moved out. I was a pretty vocal child to my mom, so if I didn't like someone, I would let her know about it. I told her that I didn't like this man and that he weirded me out and that I didn't want him coming by anymore. My mistake and misconfusion. She thought I meant that I didn't want him coming by bringing us mangoes, as I failed to mention that this guy was coming by knocking on our door every day when I was alone. So this cycle continued for about 2 more years, I would say. As I got older, I stopped inviting my cousins over, and instead I went to their house. Every time I got home from school, I would bolt for our door and run inside our home. I never made eye contact with him and would always hide in my room whenever he came over. Then we finally moved out. We had actually moved out during the evening and pretty sporadically due to family illness, and I was super happy about it. We moved to an apartment complex closer to my school and away from that neighborhood that I lived in my entire life. I thought that this would be the end of it, but a while after, we went back to visit him. Apparently my mom felt bad for leaving without saying goodbye to the nice old man, as my mom called him. We went back weeks after, and we were in his front lawn as he sat there talking to us. I just sat to the side and failed to look at him. and it was pretty awkward the entire time. Several times my mom tried to get me to talk to him, and he tried to make some very questionable physical contact that I clearly denied. It was at this moment that I guess my mom picked up on his behavior. She grabbed me and pulled me close to her, and politely told the man we had to leave. We never went back again, and that was the end of it for 8 years. Flash forward 8 years, we moved back into the neighborhood, but in a different area. Obviously at the age of 16, I wanted to keep a healthier weight and took pride in my appearance, as do a lot of teens. I would run the neighborhood, picking the same route, until one day, the route that I usually took was blocked by cars from a party that was happening. I didn't feel like dealing with it, so I took a different route and came across the street I used to live in. I jogged casually, looking around, seeing how little things had changed, until I saw my house. And then I looked ahead, and what do you know, there was the same old man, sitting in the same spot. Keep in mind, there were a bunch of girls in tank tops and shorts sitting on the cars across from him. I had my music in, and I ignored the guy. I just planned to be a normal jogger. As I passed by, the man reached out for me, and I stopped and pulled my headphones out and politely said, "Yes?" He looked at me for a second, and my gut was screeching at me to leave at that moment. He stared at me for a minute before he broke out into a grin. He told me that he recognized me as a little girl years before and complimented me on my appearance. He went into detail about how he loved to watch me play in my front yard. He said it very pleasantly, which made me think that maybe I overreacted as a small child. He spoke to me more on how I had grown up and how that he missed how small and beautiful I was. I soon realized that I should listen to my gut instinct. After complimenting me, he asked me if I had a boyfriend, to which I responded no, to which he said that was good. He then asked me if I was still a virgin, and after all these years, I came to realize that he was practically asking me all these same questions he asked me when I was a small child, but at the time I didn't understand. The last straw was when he asked me if I wanted to come in so he could treat me. I declined and left, and I never took that route again. Days later, I told my mom everything about the guy, and when I asked her what was wrong with him, she told me that my aunt had told her that his wife had died years before we moved into the house, and he just kinda lost it, and everyone suspected that he was just some drug addict creeper. But no one knew all the info until we had moved out of that place a few years later. Either way, I hope I never see that old mangled man again.